Good afternoon. This is John Mazzara with Remax Results, and with me today is Danny Pluki with Kind Mortgage or Kind Lending, and he's going to talk about another one of the self-employed programs that's out there that they have that others don't, that will allow you to buy a house where maybe you've been told no, maybe you've been told you can't buy what you want to buy, and we have options. If you're in Minnesota, I would love to be your real estate agent. And if you're not in Minnesota, however, and you're watching this, Danny can hook you up with another agent and or lender or himself in another state. So with that, I'm going to introduce Danny again and let him take it from here and talk about their profit and loss program and how you can utilize it to buy a house. So Danny?
Thanks, John. I appreciate the invite. So this is a really, really exciting program. And there's not a lot of lenders that are out there that are offering this solution for self-employed home buyers. So to give you a little background, this is called a P&L only program, right? This doesn't require bank statements. It doesn't require, 12 months documentation or 24 months documentation of individual monthly incomes, right? So the way that this program came about, I was the guinea pig. I have my own pipeline. I call it boots on the ground, right? So when we talk about items that we're discussing different topics here, this is not 30,000-foot view theory. This is boots on the ground. We're right there with you, working on these escrows, getting these, generating these clients, helping these home buyers, right? So what happened was, early 2021, early 2022, rates started to tick up, right? And I had a client that I was working with in 2021. Well, they were approved on the bank statement program and rates went up and they no longer qualified for that $650,000 house they wanted to buy, right? So I had to call them and had that uncomfortable conversation. Hey, rates went up. That lowers your buying power. So now you have to start looking at houses that are in the 570 to 580 range is about the max. And the wife was not having that, right? So I said, well, I do have this new program we're launching, right? And if you want to be the guinea pig with me, don't hold me out to dry, right? But I think we can make this work. So what we did, we talked with the CPA and they had other income that wasn't reflected in their bank statement deposits, right? So shockingly, there was a business out there that was taking in cash that wasn't depositing it, right? So I talked with the CPA, he agreed, and we developed this P&L, right? And that gave them the income that was required for them to get approved where they could close the escrow on that 650 house. And that's what they did, right? So it's a P&L only program. Now there's a couple different caveats to it, right? You have to have that P&L prepared by a third-party licensed tax person, whether it's a CPA or an enrolled agent or a certified tax professional, something like that. You can't do your own P&L and then use that, right? So it has to be a third-party licensed tax professional, right? And the income that's allowed is up to 90% of the gross income, but that will be reflected by the P&L. So if you have $100,000 in income and you have $10,000 in expenses, you're at a 90% income. That's 90% that you can use for the loan. If you have $15,000 in income, now you're using 85% of your income, right? 15% expenses, 85% income. So the P&L statement itself dictates how much you can use. If you have a 5% expense ratio, you're still going to only get credit for 90% of your gross income, right? So it's the default expense ratio is 10% minimum, right? But it's been a great program, especially for people that maybe they have multiple businesses or they have multiple locations. It's a great way to simplify. Instead of collecting, 7 sets of bank statements, all we need now is one P&L, right? And it accomplishes the exact same thing. So to make it easy on clients, to help those clients that, like I said, they have other sources of income that aren't reflected in that bank statement, it's a great way to help those self-employed home buyers get into the house that they really want.
Well, that sounds fantastic. I was one thing that just came to mind was what if, let's say, and maybe this is too much of an underwriting question, but let's say the husband wanted to buy the house and the wife had, let's say, a nail business or something like that, or some other businesses that maybe were primary cash. Could he buy the home in his name, but could the profit and loss be reflective of both the families, the combined spouse's income, or is that?
Excellent question. So the P&L would have to reflect the borrower. So she would have to be on the loan with him.
Okay.
He couldn't use her income without her on the loan.
Okay. Got it.
Good,
Okay.
great question though.
But if they were to go on something like maybe let's say a cash business, somebody with tips or a restaurant person or a hair person or a nail person, something where there's more of a cash generated income, that would be, as long as somebody verified it, that was licensed, that could be used and grossed up and used in whole.
Yeah, but remember that it's self-employed home buyers, right? So the bartender, I worked as a bartender when I was younger, right? I made great tips, but I'm not the bar owner, right? And so it's interesting when you bring that up, because we do have to verify that they own their own business, right? So there has to be, a lot of times what they'll do, what the underwriters are required to do, is they will say, well, John's RV, mobile RV washing that's run out of his mom's checking account is probably not going to pass the muster, right? So they'll ask for, hey, do you have a business license? Like most of the realtors that we do these loans for, because a lot of realtors take advantage of these products too. So their simple thing is, I get your real estate license and I get a copy of your E&O insurance. That proves that you're a legitimate business, right?
Yeah.
Over the road truck drivers, right? They have to have specialized insurance to haul freight, right? Traveling nurses need to have their own malpractice insurance, because under contract, they're not always picked up by the hospital, right? So these are all examples of different fields where we help deliver these mortgage options to those home buyers, and we find a creative solution for them. But more to your question, a waitress or a bartender, somebody that works for somebody else, unless they have a big 1099, this isn't the program for them. Got it.
Okay. That I forgot about the business owner part. So yeah, thanks for clarifying that for me. And yeah, for realtors, I've been a realtor for 35 years, and it is difficult because to get a loan sometimes, even if you have great credit. So yeah, that's there's a million realtors licensed or whatever it is out throughout the country that should be using your program, especially when we talk about the investment property program, in an upcoming video. That program is absolutely insane.
That'll be next.
All right. Perfect. Well, good. Well, this is another tool, another way that people can buy a home. Just fantastic that it's out there, and the ratio. And again, even if the rate's a little bit higher, they don't have the PMI. So if you offset the PMI with the rate, you're roughly the same deal or very close.
Yep.
So that's, it isn't outrageous. It's not like hard money. So definitely, if people want to get into a home, here's another tool. Why constrain yourself when you don't need to, when there's an option? Danny, is there anything else you'd like to add about the P&L program?
No, I would just recommend that if you're looking at your bank statements, it's not always the best option for you, right? You could have seasonal employment, right? I have resort owners that are buying properties, and they close their resort because it's freezing, right?
Sure.
They close after Christmas. They don't open again until April 1st. So they have 4 months of no income. You can't get approved for bank statements that way, right? We actually had another example that just popped in my head. We had another example where the comptroller was running the account so tight that they had about 60 NSFs in a year. And normally that would not fly, that you would not get approved with that. Right?
Sure.
You can't be bouncing checks and get approved for a mortgage using the business bank statements, right? So we pivoted to the P&L right through, right? So it's a great program to have in your hip pocket. It's a great program for someone that, for whatever reason, whether it's not all the money's going into the bank account, right? There might be months that they're dormant or there was no income. You know, it happened during COVID. People closed their businesses for 3 or 4 months, right?
Sure.
Different circumstances like that, the NSFs, right? They added someone to the bank account or took someone off the bank account, and that we can't have a 12-month consistent one person or 2 people on the bank statement. That's another reason why we would pivot to the P&L, right? And
Sure.
I don't want the fact that the P&L has to be prepared by a tax professional scare anyone, because literally half of our clients do their own taxes, and we end up helping them find a CPA or a tax professional in their area that can very easily come up with these different documents that we need. It's not a crisis. We do it all the time.
Wow. Okay. Well, that sounds fantastic. I have kind of a weird question. So roofers in Minnesota, can't roof in the wintertime. So
Right.
obviously their income is seasonal, where, they're making hay, spring to fall, and then they go dormant, if you will. So
Right.
that comes to mind. But to put a twist on that, we have a large a migrant population from, maybe from a foreign country. And so they have their ITNs, but they don't have their cards or whatever, their full citizenship. Are these programs allowed for people with ITNs too, or is it just U.S. citizens, or what's the status on that type of thing?
Yeah, typically it's U.S. citizens, and here's why. Great question, by the way. So here's why. With the ITIN program, which we do have outlets for that, right? The ITIN program is typically not for business owners. It's typically for people that are here on a work visa, right? They're working for, Twitter, right? As an engineer, and they've got everything they need to buy a house, but they don't have a social security number, right? So we use that ITIN number, and then that allows them to follow similar guidelines as a U.S. resident, right? But it's a completely different animal, and I would say that probably, and this is just a generalization, right? You don't have the income required for someone that's working close to a minimum wage job as you would for someone that's making $160,000 as an engineer at Twitter or Google, right? So
Sure.
that's that, and especially not if it's only for 8 months, right?
True.
So I'm trying to be delicate about it, but there's no program that bridges both of those gaps. We have the low income programs, which we deliver all the time.
Sure.
We have the ITIN programs, which we have access to also, but there's no meshing of the two yet.
Okay, perfect. Well, that's great to know that you do the ITINs as well. So if somebody is watching this and doesn't have their U.S. citizenship and a social security number, a lot of the traditional lenders that are around town and in Minnesota here don't have outlets for that. They just say we can't help you.
Right.
So now we know Danny can. So I know we're talking about self-employed, but if you know somebody that is in that situation, again, as a national broker, he is an outlet. And again, if you're in Minnesota, go ahead and see Danny get pre-approved and come on back and I'll get you a house. So Danny, anything else you'd like to add about the P&L statement before we wrap up this video?
Oh, no, that's it. Any questions? If anybody has if they have questions like we just came up with on our own, right? Feel free to reach out to John. Feel free to reach out to myself, and we'll get those answers for you right away.
Beautiful. Thank you for your time today, and looking forward to our next video.
Thanks, John.